Barracks Row is totally different.
Today, our relationship with the community is quite strong. We work really closely with the Barracks Row, Main Street.
This one is from 1903, and it's showing the area around Barracks Row.
What happens when a neighborhood changes from one ethnic group to another? Does the old community fade away and cease to be? Or does it get folded into a new culture, fully accepted and respected? Can you hear it? Can you see it? Do you feel it? The changes are coming. They are here, and the people are talking in whispers.
I'm Lauren Martino. I'm a special collections librarian here at the DC Public Library, and this is the Washingtoniana room. This is where we archive and preserve local history of Washington, DC. We have several different collections that you can use for research. One is the map collection, which I'm going to show you some more of. We have vertical files, which are mostly newspaper clippings on just about any topic in DC history. We have the DC Community Archives, which are archival collections from different organizations and people from the city. We also have an extensive photo collection. The largest one is from the Washington Star.
Our school, Wright Public Charter School for Journalism and Media Arts, is located at the bottom of Barracks Row at 8th and M Street Southeast. We have been housed here for the last 4 years. Sometimes we feel like we are foreigners when we walk through the neighborhood, like we don't belong here. Do we fit in, or do we stand out like a sore thumb? We're looking at the history to find something of ourselves here to show we belong. Just because the neighborhood is changing, does that mean we and the memory of the recent past gets marginalized?
Overall, I wish that our young people in Barracks Row that are still here would emulate a little more the character of those pioneers who were here time past, where they were resilient about spreading who they are and being who they are, but having, for the most part, a real positive attitude about keeping the place up. And so I think we did a decent job of that prior to the riots, and I guess after the riots, I guess it looks like it was an opportune time to make a change, and I think that's what happened. It made a change. Barracks Row, like DC, remember, Washington, D.C. back in the 60s and 70s was Chocolate City #1, meaning it was the one city that was all black or all African American or whatever you want to use to describe the ethnicity of who we are. Today, Barracks Row is a mecca of economic environment. It is what's being touted as the pilot or the way to go. My experience in the Barracks Row was immediately prior to coming to school and sometimes after school. After school, sometimes we got a chance to venture down towards the Navy Yard from up at the top where Pennsylvania Avenue is at. But the vast majority of the time was spent in the school. And it's very different when you're moved from your neighborhood or where you know everybody in the neighborhood to a neighborhood where you don't know anybody, and you are placed in a setting where several groups have been bused to that settings. And so my experience was different, but today I look back on it and say it was pretty positive. It's pretty positive because in DC, being a Washingtonian, a lot of people from one side of town will tell you they lived there their whole life and never been to the other side of town.
The relationship hasn't changed too much between the barracks and the community. The majority of the Marines live here in the community, and basically since the 50s we've been doing Friday evening parades, so providing these parades for the community as well as individuals around DC as well as outside of DC from many different states and also different countries. The Marines here, the majority of them are 21 or younger, so most of them, this is the first time, they just graduated high school, this is the first time that they've been away from home, and they're in their first year being away from home or their second year being away from home. So most of them are right out of high school. I know there's a huge difference between being in high school and graduating from high school, but they're really right there in that same age group, so I would assume that the similarities and what their interests are and being able to socialize with high schoolers is very similar. I think that the Marine Corps and the students from Richard Wright could have a really great relationship in terms of just opening up when you guys see each other on the street or at restaurants, just passing by. There's a lot of Marines here who are not from the local area and have a lot of interest in being here and what there is to do and what it's like growing up here. And they can also provide you with that same information, what it's like being from somewhere else, just a little bit of insight about where they're from, where you guys are from, what kind of activities you like to do, and really what's in the area, because the students at Richard Wright, they know the area, they know what to do, and they can really provide a lot of good information to the Marines here. There was a lot of support from the Marines to man the block, and I think this is the beginning of a really good relationship between the Marine Corps and Richard Wright. The Marines wanted to get out there, they wanted to meet the students, and they wanted to be part of something that's in the local community.
I think the Marines here at the barracks, they're really enthusiastic about getting out and helping or assisting in any way they can with the local community. So if there's anything that any of the local community might need, just reaching out to the barracks here, and whether it's cleaning up litter or something on the road, or like we did the Man the Block, the event a few weeks ago, anything like that, the Marines would be more than happy to help out and participate in that.
After the riots, the 8th Street corridor became a ghost town. People who could afford to move away from the capers did. The freeway now divided Upper 8th Street from Lower 8th Street. Something stayed the same: the bus routes, the schools, and the 6 a.m. bugle.
Can you describe to us a little bit about the community before and after the riots and post-riots?
Well, before the riots, part of what hurt this community was the Southwest Freeway, which totally separated the community. The community was a place where you had multi-generations either living in a house or living across the street, and so that they formed a bond, and it made communities very open and loving and stable, regardless of whether they made money or not. But when they put the freeway through Southwest, it separated the communities, and it took a long time for them to recover from that. The riots that happened in 1968, when Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated, was just devastating financially to this area. There was so much pent-up grief and anger, and a lot of things were destroyed. But people that were here and doing good in the community, the people that are writing didn't touch their places. They didn't touch the church because we were working in the church. There was a Jewish owner of a grocery store just up on 8th Street who fed everybody and put all their food on credit, and they could pay. They didn't touch that. So when the riots were over, there were a lot of abandoned places and abandoned houses, but the community was intact. It just was abandoned by businesses. So that was devastating to the community. We always felt a part of this wonderful community, and I applaud you for doing your research and your due diligence to find out what went on. And it was a beautiful community, and we loved it. I was honored to be a pastor here. But as gentrification started, and that's just something that happens in cities around the country, new people moving in didn't care for what happened in the past, and they didn't see a need for churches like ours and other churches. When we would have weddings and funerals, we would get a lot of grief from the neighborhood. The new people moved in. And I used to think it was just toward the church, but I realize it's toward anything that happened in the past, really. And I don't think, there's some great historian said that if we forget the past, we're doomed to repeat it. So it's important to know what went on here. This is always a vital, vibrant community. But when it became a place where we could no longer work to help people who were in need, we felt it was time to leave, and so we moved to. Don't forget the past. Don't forget the people that brought you over the bridge to where you are now. There were dynamic people working here 50 years ago. There were young people just like you, just as stylish as you, and having just as much fun as you're having now. Back then, we had fun as a community, as a church, as a city. It was a great city. And I just respect people, ask older people to tell you what their life was like growing up. That's a treasure.